أصحاب السعادة، الضيوف الكرام، السيدات والسادة، الجلسة التالية في مسرح الواحة على وشك البدء. يرجى الجلوس في مقاعدكم وتحويل أجهزتكم المحمولة إلى الوضع الصامت، وشكرا.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to take your seats in the Awaha Theatre. The next session is starting shortly. Please ensure that your mobile devices are switched to silent. Thank you.
أصحاب السعادة، الضيوف الكرام، السيدات والسادة، ندعوكم للجلوس في مقاعدكم. الجلسة التالية على وشك البدء. يرجى تحويل أجهزتكم المحمولة إلى الوضع الصامت، وشكرا.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the next session in the Awaha Theatre is about to begin. Please take your seats and ensure that your mobile devices are switched to silent.
أصحاب السعادة، الضيوف الكرام، السيدات والسادة، ندعوكم للجلوس في مقاعدكم. الجلسة التالية على وشك البدء. يرجى تحويل أجهزتكم المحمولة إلى الوضع الصامت، وشكرا.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the next session in the Al-Waha Theatre is about to begin. Please take your seats and ensure that your mobile devices are switched to silent.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this very special event here at COP28 in Dubai. And welcome to everyone watching from around the world as we broadcast live from the United Arab Emirates. My name's Amandeep. And as a journalist who's covered environmental stories for the BBC, Al Jazeera English and many more, and now being based here, it gives me great pleasure to be part of this very special celebration, because this evening really is going to be a celebration. This is a key session here at COP28. We will be having the official launch of the Global Cooling Pledge. Now, this pledge has been led by the COP28 presidency and supported by the United Nations Environment Programme and its partners as part of the Cool Coalition. I quite like that name. Currently, we are counting 63 countries as having endorsed this, but we're looking for more. Please tell your friends. Maybe even during this evening, we'll give you an updated number. We're representing over half the population of the world in supporting the Global Cooling Pledge so far. Now, as we've heard, UNEP-led Cool Coalition is the technical delivery partner of the Global Cooling Pledge. And without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to invite on stage the Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme, Inga Anderson. Please do give her a very warm welcome.
Good evening. This is a place where all the cool people hang out. Welcome. Look, Keeping cool in a warming world is absolutely necessary, and that is why this pledge is so important. And I want to express my deep thanks to the United Arab Emirates and to Dr. Sultan Al Jaber for his leadership on this issue, because we have to protect ourselves from these heating temperatures, but we also have to ensure that our food chains, our vaccines, that they remain stable and cool, and we have to keep our economies productive. And all of that is, of course, needed if we are to reach these Sustainable Development Goals. We know that over 3 billion people are vulnerable to climate change, and we know, as we saw just this last year, what extreme heat does to us. We know that we are an urbanizing civilization, and the more we urbanize, the more we create heat, and the more we need cooling. And while we cool, of course, the irony is that while we cool our bodies, the CO2 that we use and the gases that we use for cooling can warm our planet. We also understand that still 1.2 billion people lack access to cooling, and we know that this disproportionately affects women, especially pregnant women, of course. The emissions gap report, Broken Record, that UNEP issued tells us that we are heading, based on the NDCs right now, to a 2.9 degree world. If we add the conditional NDCs, it tells us that we are heading to a 2.5 degree world. As we're seeking to stretch here based on the global stocktake, hopefully we will stretch so that we can reduce our CO2 emissions by 42% by 2030 so that we can hit the 1.5 degree world that we want. But nevertheless, in a 1.5 degree world, we will need cooling, and we will need cooling 3 times the current capacity by 2050. And that growth will strain our electricity networks. It will hold back the energy transition. It will increase to emissions by 6.1 billion tons unless we take good action. Because we know that inefficient air conditioners and poorly designed buildings, as well as HFCs, add to the challenge. So what we need to do is to do it better and do it now. And that is why the COP28 UAE presidency global cooling pledge is so important. It is a real opportunity to increase access to cooling and to reduce emissions. Based on our Global Cooling Watch report, we understand that measures to reduce emission by over 60% by 2050 can save $22 trillion, reduce peak load demand by 1.5 to 2 terawatts. So incorporating passive cooling, which I think we all know when we walk around this beautiful campus, the moment we are under a shaded area, the moment that we are where trees are, we understand immediately what cooling means, what passive cooling and how it works. We also understand some of the design when the breeze just floats right through and we feel a little bit cooler. That is smart building, and we have experienced it right here. We also understand that we have to be clever about the refrigerants that we are using for cooling, and I'm speaking in front of the minister from Rwanda, because we have the Kigali Amendment that was gavelled in Rwanda under the Montreal Protocol that will phase out some of the chlorinated gases that have a deep impact on our climate. So delivering on this pledge, well, today we're going to hear, and we just heard, 63 countries have already signed up, which is a massive achievement by, yes, thank you. It's a massive achievement by the UAE presidency, really lifting this forward. And today we're going to hear some inspirational examples. For example, from some of the cool champions that we have, His Excellency Dan Jørgensen of Denmark, and Her Excellency, I think, Rosalinda Toipan of Kenya will also be speaking, as will Her Excellency, Madame Chandok. But national governments alone cannot do this. World cities are heating up, and so city actions have to be done, smart city planning. And the truth is that we have regulations on fire hazards, on electrical fires. It's already there. We surely can introduce regulations for smart building that will create better passive cooling. This is critical and something that I encourage cities and countries to introduce. And manufacturers and industries can lean in to ensure that we get better efficiency for our cooling. We from UNEP are extremely proud to be serving this important area. We are proud also because on the issue of CFCs, we have been hosting the Montreal Protocol for decades. We are, of course, hosting the Kigali Amendment. And on the methane side, as you know from yesterday's many events, we are also very much hosting that. So it's a great honor for us also to be supporting the cooling pledge and to be holding the secretariat for this pledge. So that's really what I would like to say. As we will hear from some very cool speakers, this is an important topic and a topic whose time has come, because it is again a low-hanging fruit like methane. And if we get this cooling pledge to work, we will reduce our CO2 and some of the short-lived climate pollutants very rapidly, which is of course where we want to go, because this is where the cool folks hang out. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Inger Andersen, the Executive Director of UNEP, with the powerful opening statement. And right on cue, without further ado, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome on stage a gentleman who's been championing Global Cooling Pledge for, well, a long time. As Inger Andersen described there, this is over a year in the making, but many, many years have led up to this very exciting moment. So it gives me great pleasure to invite on stage Mr. John Kerry, the United States Special Presidential Envoy for Climate. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Inger. Thank you for your great leadership and comments. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you very much for being here. I know that Dr. Sultan is going to be here at some point, or I hope he's going to be here at some point. But let me just share with all of you that the United States is pleased, proud even, to have worked with the UN Development Program and the COP28 presidency in order to bring so many partners here to be part of this global cooling pledge. Now, some of you may sit there and think, well, isn't that the whole objective of what we're doing here? Well, yes, and avoiding the heat or avoiding the heating is probably the beginning of the effort to try to cool. But the fact is that this global cooling pledge can have a profound impact on lives around the world and on our larger quest, obviously, of holding the Earth's temperature increase to the 1.5 degrees. So this is really laying out a roadmap for how we go farther than where we thought we were going anyway with the Kigali Amendment. And the Kigali Treaty, I was there in Nairobi when we did it. Kigali was hard fought, it was tough, but we got it done, and now we have, I forget the exact number, 100 and some nations that have ratified and moved on. But what we don't have is a recognition, if you will, of the challenge that we face because of the increased rate of warming that's taking place. Things are happening faster than anybody ever imagined. And so we want to lay out a pathway to reduce cooling related emissions across all sectors and increase the access to sustainable cooling. Sustainable cooling obviously acts as both a mitigation and an adaptation strategy. It is both. And coordinated international action on sustainable cooling could save 78 billion tons of CO2 equivalent between now and 2050. That is more than 2 years' worth of global energy emissions, folks. So this is serious business. And it's a big difference. The Kigali Amendment, we all know, could bring us 0.5 Celsius of cooling. It's that much of a reduction. But implementing this pledge actually accelerates Kigali and brings us 0.1 degrees of cooling by 2050. That's really important, given what is happening. And what I mean by given what is happening is extreme heat is now the deadliest weather event in my country, at least. But this is true, obviously, of many other places. You can already see people who are dying massively. About 500,000 people a year are dying from extreme heat around the world. And the problem is, as it gets warmer faster, against some of the predictions that we all made, that means that people demand more cooling, more immediate cooling that comes through air conditioning by the most part. And that air conditioning then becomes a problem because not everybody has transitioned according to the Kigali effort so that they're using less pollutant, damaging internal, some of the HFC equivalent, which is so dangerous. So that's the challenge here. And we're working with our partners to do something creative, something ambitious, something that reaches beyond where we had a comfort level in doing Kigali that we were all happy. And so we're really pleased to have worked with a lot of other partners to establish the Global Cooling Prize. And this is a groundbreaking competition which led to the development of an air conditioning unit that has 5 times less climate impact than standard air conditioning units in the market today. And we're already seeing the market entry of some prototypes from the competition. Obviously, we're hopeful that competition is going to increase the number of different units that are available that are going to do less damage. We're very pleased that the pledge, which we're asking people to join, calls for countries that have not yet ratified Kigali to join the 155 countries that have ratified it. And I congratulate the UAE for joining the Kigali Amendment, which they did at our methane and other non-CO2 greenhouse gases summit on Saturday right here in this theater. I call politely but firmly on other countries who haven't yet ratified, please do so. This is life and death, and it's really not a complicated way of making a difference. It's also important for countries who are already in Kigali to maximize the very rationale for them going into that Kigali Amendment. This is the way we gain more, faster, protect more people. And we maximize the effort of coordinating action on efficiency in cooling. We manage refrigerants across their life cycle. And we have the ability, hopefully, to announce an expedited HFC phase down. So, my friends, we are supporting robust action through the Montreal Protocol's multilateral fund for early action to reduce HFC consumption and to promote improved energy efficiency for the hydrofluorocarbons, HCFCs, phase out, and hydrofluorocarbon phase down. Phase out, phase down. And the United States is very proud to have worked with our partners. Just this past October in Nairobi, the nearly $1 billion historic replenishment of the Montreal Protocol's Multilateral Fund for the 2024 to 26 triennium. My friends, these funds are going to support the implementation of the Kigali Amendment, including the early action and improving energy efficiency, which is really critical to be able to achieve the cooling. So once again, really big thank you to those of you who are taking part of this, those of you who are supportive, those of you who are going to fight to make sure this happens, to bring more people to the table. At this stage, it's just not excusable not to have everybody. There are about 195 countries here, and there are people all over the world who depend on all of us to make these choices. So let's band together, become the crusaders, the people who are willing to fight for this transition faster. We have an ability to save lives. We have an ability to do Kigali faster. We have an ability to actually get cooling beyond Kigali, and we have an ability to implement this on a much faster basis. Shame on us if we don't take the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Wow, what powerful words and what a powerful endorsement of the Global Cooling Pledge. We are honoured to have the presence of John Kerry, the United States Special Presidential Envoy for Climate. The illustrious lineup of speakers coming from across the world, it continues. It gives me great pleasure, without further ado, to introduce our first panel discussion. So may I invite up on stage, and we'll do it one by one because I think they all deserve a big round of applause. We're going to be looking at global perspectives, raising ambition in sustainable cooling. And to join me for this, His Excellency Danny Jorgensen, the Minister for Development Cooperation and Global Climate Policy from Denmark. Damalola Agonbi, the CEO and Special Representative of the UN Secretary-General for Sustainable Energy for All. Her Excellency, Dr. Jeanne d'Arc Mujawamra, who is the Minister of Environment, Republic of Rwanda. And His Excellency Tariq Ibrahim, Minister of Climate Change, Environment and Energy, Maldives. His Excellency Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempe, who is the Minister of Energy for Ghana. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to be taking the podium spot as I welcome all of my panelists here. Fantastic. And may I ask, because you have an illustrious audience for our illustrious panelists, may I begin by asking, the Global Cooling Pledge, if I may go through my panelists here and ask you, what was your motivation for signing up and what are you hoping it will achieve?
Well, first of all, I don't see how we cannot address this issue. If we look at how many people die every year because of heat waves, the latest number I saw was around 12,000 people. 1/3 of the world's population live in a country where the heat is threatening to their health more than 20 days a year. If we look at the number of people that are dying or becoming severely ill because they don't have the vaccines due to lack of cooling of the vaccines, if we look at all of the food waste that's created on the planet, probably we could save enough food to feed 800 million people. All of these things combined really tells us that it is a no-brainer to deal with this issue, especially because we have the technology. So many other issues that we deal with when fighting climate change and trying to adapt better and create resilience are difficult because we don't really know how to do it yet. But this is one of the areas where we do know what to do, where we do have the technology and where it should be possible to find the funding. So I think putting this on top of the agenda, dealing with this across all of the areas where we have the possibility is extremely important.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for a flying start. May I make my way down the list? And of course, we have Damilola Ogunbi. May I turn to you now, please?
Thank you very much. Firstly, you have Inga championing it, and everything Inga does champion works well because she does truly care and puts people behind the science every single time. So as soon as she calls on me, I will always be there. But more importantly, I deal with SDG 7, universal access to energy. And we know now that you can't live a dignified life without having access to cooling. So it doesn't make sense as we try and electrify the easily 675 million people that don't have access to electricity to not include cooling as part of the solution. And if that cooling is not sustainable, if that cooling is not efficient, we will be coming back to transition out of things again. So for me, it was important to incorporate this into everything we do. It's just, we had a session with you earlier on clean cooking. It's the same thing. How do we incorporate all these bits at the beginning, work all of them in parallel, so you're not coming back again. You are making that pledge that to live a dignified life, you need cooling, you need access to electricity, you need access to clean cooking, and you need to have it in an efficient, affordable way.
Fantastic. And I do appreciate there, Damilola Ogunbi, that you made that link to the earlier session, because here at COP28, this is one holistic family. And these issues, they do really have a knock-on impact, and also there's a combined solution there. So thank you so much for highlighting this. Now turning to Her Excellency, Dr. Jeanne d'Arc Mujawamariya, hope the London accent got that right, the Minister of Environment for Republic of Rwanda. Your motivation?
Thank you very much. I sit before you as a proud citizen of Rwanda. Rwanda, where the country is caring for its citizens, where the pride of having our people being cared for, and where we advocate for sustainable solutions that transcend borders and contribute to a resilient and sustainable future. A country where originated the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol. A country that recognizes that 40% of our production in Africa is lost between farm and market. A country that wants access to sustainable cooling for the most vulnerable people who are feeding us all. A country that sees the urgency of our climate challenges compounded by the impact of rising temperature and more frequent heat waves necessitate comprehensive and transformative action. A country that sees that this is a global challenge that needs global solution. That's why we signed it.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And as you so eloquently point out there, with Rwanda being on the front line to actually see the impact and therefore hopefully be part of the solution as well, this is very timely for us to move on to Maldives. His Excellency Tariq Ibrahim, the Minister of Climate Change, Environment and Energy. Of course, Maldives is also really seeing that huge, big impact. The Global Cooling Pledge, what does it mean for you?
Thank you very much. Maldives is situated right across the equator, and apart from the temperature, we have the humidity is actually, it's a very big problem to us. So what you feel is more than what you see on the temperature scale. So as you know, Maldives is an isolated, in the sense we import about 90% of our food. We import our energy, 100% of fuel is imported, and we spend about 13% of our GDP importing fuel for our generation. And for cooling, for the electricity, we use most of the imported fuel for cooling, for generating electricity, and out of that, major portion goes for cooling. So we want to find solutions on how we can have this cooling to be cooling most efficient, so that we can save on cooling and on electricity, and reduce the emission that we reduce the emission, plus save on cooling, which will then save the money saved can be used for something very useful. So that's the reason why we signed on this cooling pledge.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And now we turn to His Excellency Dr. Matthew Opuke Prempeh, the Minister of Energy at Ghana, patiently waiting there and listening to your colleagues here on the stage, describing some of the very pertinent issues. What may I ask you to also add to this as well, the motivation, the reasoning, why Global Cooling Pledge really is the way forward?
Thank you. For us in Ghana, it was in our self-interest to be part of this global pledge. Why? Because we already are facing a huge rate of urbanization. Over 50% of the Ghanaian populace live in urban cities and towns now. We have electricity challenges, even though our access rate has reached 88.5. But we also see a ton of our food being wasted daily. We also know the health effects. When the COVID outbreak came, we're struggling to have cooling systems to the vaccines to every part of the country to achieve a near universal vaccination program. So it is in our interest, and we've taken steps to do a lot of things. But also, we had an international obligation and a commitment to uphold and be part of, and that is maintaining temperature below up to 1.5 degrees that we all agree. So when you look at all health reasons, saving electricity by even coming up with minimum efficiency standards for over 19 electrical appliances, it is in our self-interest to not only to be part of this global pledge, but also to promote other countries who have not already signed to sign and be part of it, because it's in all our interest. And that is why Ghana was motivated to be part of the countries that have signed the pledge.
Fantastic. Thank you, Your Excellency, for really outlining and highlighting the critical nature of this, as you began by saying, out of self-interest, but you expanded onto the point that we really need to promote more countries and signatories to join up, and hopefully this particular session here at COP28, with its high profile, will also ensure that drive and people watching from across the world this live broadcast. I'm going to return now, very briefly. We've got a few more minutes on the clock, so let's just make most of that. Your Excellency, Dan Jorgensen, we began with you, and I think I might be forgiven for saying, on behalf of the audience, Denmark is in a slightly different position when we talk about global cooling pledge. I think that's a fair question to ask. So yourself and the citizens you represent, we're not just talking about cooling in the sense of temperatures. We're also talking, as His Excellency from Ghana was outlining there when it came to the vaccines. There's a multiple layered approach here.
Yes, well, and a lot of the efforts that we need to do really has to do with energy efficiency. And this is an area where we in Denmark are fortunate enough to have a lot of companies that have a lot of expertise on this. So we have Danish companies that are supplying solutions for cooling of food change all over the world, for cooling of food in transportation, for the exploitation of excess heat from data centers, from making sure that appliances being in water treatment or elsewhere are energy efficient. Now, I want to share with you just one perspective on this because it's important. Very often people consider this investments, which they are, but they look at them as something that is expensive and that is a luxury that maybe we coming from a rich Nordic country can afford. But actually I would turn that around. Most investments that you do in energy efficiency are paid back very, very fast. And it's something that is going to not hurt your competitiveness, not hurt your wealth or your living standard, but will actually do the opposite. When we started our transformation in the 1970s, both towards more renewable energy, but also more energy efficiency, it wasn't because of the climate. That wasn't even on the agenda then. When we did it, it was because of the oil prices. We wanted to be independent of fossils from other countries. We wanted to make sure that we could save money. And that then led to development of technology that is today helping us fight climate change.
Thank you so much, and it expands our perspective on the role that Denmark is playing, so that's wonderful to hear this. And Damilola Ogunbi, we touched on it earlier. You, of course, being the CEO and Special Representative of the UN Secretary-General for Sustainable Energy for All in the earlier session today being dedicated to energy, industry and just transition. We really looked at how electrifying cooking was going to be something transformational when it came to the lives of women, especially in developing countries. Again, would you say something like global cooling, this particular pledge, also is a targeted way to really kind of ensure that we empower those that are disenfranchised?
I mean, absolutely. Unfortunately, when it comes to a lot of these things, it's normally women and children in the most vulnerable countries that suffer the most. Now we're seeing heating that causes death. It's getting to really, really hot levels, but in a lot of our countries in the global south, it's been happening for a long time. And that's why we say when we're talking about access to energy, a just and equitable energy transition, we need to include cooling. And like the minister said, we need to include energy efficiency methods from the beginning, not to save on things or say a lack of things. If anything, we need to turn it around. It means you have more of when you save in certain areas. And I think that's how, we wanted to take cooling. We're really excited about the different technologies that is coming out from the whole value chain, from the small kind of, energy efficient freezers. And we're seeing, for vaccines from, I deal with a lot of SMEs and market women that are buying refrigerators now, and that technology is changing. The innovation we're finding in financing to be able to finance cooling a little bit more. So, just like the minister said and Inga said as well, it's not just about a pledge, it's about how you turn that around to an opportunity and an industry in a lot of these localities, and that's what we're really, really excited about.
And thank you so much for emphasizing those words there, innovation, finance, and also for championing Inga Anderson, and in the presence of John Kerry, of course, the United States Special Representative Envoy for Climate. May we just recognize what the organizers, not only of COP28, but this special session here have pulled together for us, the illustrious lineup, and look at this panel representing the world. I think this deserves a round of applause in itself. And, really, this is marked, this COP28 is trying to do that, not only in words, but in actions, in announcements, as Damilola and I were present in the sessions earlier, and you've all been participants of all the sessions here at COP28. There's real investment. You mentioned innovation and finance. Now, as we come to you, Dr. Jean, we've just got a few more moments on the clock. We've been talking about some of the solutions and why the reasoning behind global cooling pledge really does make sense. Let's just identify some of the snag points that you might anticipate. What more do we need? John Kerry there was very eloquent in describing we need more countries to join up. Well, what would you say in terms of your perspective?
Thank you very much. Let me first thank Inga Anderson for calling upon nations to sign this global cooling pledge. Because in Rwanda, we don't separate global cooling pledge to the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol. If you are a signatory or you have ratified Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, you should sign this global cooling pledge because it goes together. For us in Rwanda, we have started implementing Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, because Rwanda is a home to the groundbreaking initiative of the Africa Center of Excellence for Sustainable Cooling and Cold Chains. And soon we are being home to the Africa Vaccine Factory. So there is that determination of our country, of Rwanda, to be a home of solutions. So that's why I call upon countries, first of all, to ratify Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol and to sign Global Cooling Pledge. Otherwise, we won't protect the humanity. I thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Excellency. And as we've been hearing, this particular pledge has been over a year in the making. And you're right to reference, as your peers have referenced, the Kigali Agreement and the Montreal Protocol as well, and which, of course, are many, many years in the making as well. As I bring in His Excellency, our wonderful Minister of Climate Change, Environment and Energy for the Maldives, historically, the Maldives has been very vocal when it comes to this particular area. We are trying for that North Star to stay within the reach of 1.5. Do you feel like over the years, here we are at COP28, the action has followed the words as well, generally, globally? Speak openly, you're amongst friends.
Thank you, thank you. I think I was there at COP21 when we all signed the Paris Agreement. There, for small island states, the statement 1.5 degrees is very, very important and something that is close to our heart, you know. So I think I feel a bit sad at the moment because the global stock text tells us that it is going beyond 3 degrees now. So we need to work on bringing that trajectory down towards 1.5. So I call upon the bigger emitting countries to work on reducing their emission, and then also helping the smaller islands to adapt on climate change. So that climate change adaptation goes with the cooling as well, you know. And for us, on our part, we have a slogan which we always try to tell our citizens that if you have an air condition at home, we always tell them then that to remember it's cool at 25. So reduce your temperature or increase your temperature and keep it at 25, not at 16. So this is some slogan that we used to have so that we can play our part to be more efficient and also reduce the energy consumption. That's what I can say to you.
Fantastic, and it's great to hear that historical perspective. As you say, you were there in COP21, and you're right to say the representation of small island nations is very, very crucial as we move from small island nations and we bring in Ghana again. And Your Excellency, you very astutely, Dr. Matthew, you astutely pointed out we need to promote other countries to join. Inga Anderson and John Kerry also began this session today. How can we get them on board? What do you anticipate is reluctance? What can we, as a collective group effort in this room, identify that reluctance, and how can we transition that?
Thank you. Like what my sister just said, Minister for Environment from Kigali, it is in our one, if you're a party, and Ghana is a party to the Montreal Agreement, and if you've signed on to the Kigali Agreement, promoting energy efficiency, phasing out HCFCs and phasing down HFC, you can't think any other ways but joining the cooling alliance, as I would say. But we in Ghana, what have we done? We've translated those pledges and signatories to real daily life situations. So we've already set in place a standard, a minimum energy certification standard for 19 electrical appliances, air conditioning, freezers, refrigerators, transformers for the electrical grid, iron, TV sets, computer screens, everything. We've come out and Parliament has supported it. Because we in the developing countries also stand at risk of dumping of electrical appliances in our countries. And it is, again, the speed with which we can implement some of these agreements that we've signed and coming up with minimum energy certification that is going to help us from being a dumping place. The second thing is that we have gone ahead and accepted the building codes and its regulations for minimum energy efficiency buildings. We are working to get it because we have already come up with a building code in the country to make sure that even buildings that are being constructed now follow a certain minimum energy thresholds. Not only that, we've also decided to train all government and public institutions in their procurement so that they do what we call green procurement practices, because they are the biggest purchasers of cooling appliances in the country. So that in the evaluation of cooling appliances, they have a look at minimum energy efficiency so that they don't just buy air conditioners with 1 star or 2 star, but because our minimum is probably now 3 star. What Ghana needs, as an example for other countries who are yet to sign, is a partnership to develop the testing laboratories so that the regulators, when people bring in, because every electrical appliance is literally brought in from outside, that the regulators will be able to test to make sure that they meet these minimum energy standards that we have set, and we make it punitive for people who are trying to dump. We also have participated in some rebate schemes when we're doing the HFC, so that if you brought in your old fridge, you get a new one purchased and a rebate given. So we need support in those 2 areas and probably to create more awareness that for countries in Africa that are energy deprived, we have the highest energy poverty systems around the world. It is almost always in our interest to also ensure that the little that we have, we don't waste it in an energy inefficient system. So I can only say that we hope every country can abide by, can join this global alliance, and we hope that we can get the partnerships to make sure that we don't be at the receiving end of bad, inefficient appliances by having the testing laboratories in country, in every African country, and also the schemes to let people enjoy the benefit of buying good appliances in the first instance, not as a second thought. But thank you for that.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think that point that you make there, Your Excellency, Dr. Matthew, in terms of really talking about incentivising greater cooperation when we talk about country level, and also you mentioned it there briefly, and maybe we can unpack this in this next question, if I may put it to all of you, because I've been very conscious of ensuring that everybody has an equal part in our panel discussion, but now I'm going to throw it open to you. We, of course, were very wonderfully represented in terms of country representation, and Damalola here with our Sustainable Energy for All. When we talk about countries, and we want to also talk about the essential role that private sector, development banks and financial institutions and philanthropy also play in supporting the global cooling pledge, what incentives, as His Excellency was describing there, can we also highlight, introduce and bring people on board? Perhaps if I can bring in yourself, Damalola, because you spoke about innovation earlier.
I think some of the practices we've used for energy access makes a lot of sense. You know, there's a lot of results-based financing that DFIs do push countries to do. This is for the installation of either solar standalone systems. This is connections to a mini-grid. There's no reason why there can't be results-based financing for efficient cooling as well. You can add it on the energy access program, or you can have an appliance program focused on it. Like the Honourable Minister for Ghana said, there's a lot of homegrown solutions as well. So it's not just about developing things in DC, or it's about coming to the countries and understanding how it works, what is the affordability, how people pay over time, what are the other instruments that you need to hedge. But it's really important to understand that this is, I know people don't like hearing subsidy, but this is something that you will subsidize, but it will be cheaper in the long run, and it is sustainable. So that is what I would encourage, a sustainable resource-based financing model to make sure everyone gets access to cooling.
And I think that definitely needs to be applauded. What can be done here? Because we are here as part of a support for the Global Cooling Pledge, but also we can use this opportunity to brainstorm some solutions. What can be done to encourage some of those initiatives that you described? May I open that out to any of our excellencies to join in? Perhaps yourself, yes, Your Excellency.
Well, one point that I think is important to acknowledge is that a lot of what we need to do here is both mitigation and adaptation. So really, when we look at the potential investors out there, that could be private investors, institutional investors, it could also be governments like my own wanting to help with government grants. It's really difficult to point at areas where you will get so much value for the money that you will invest. It will save energy, thereby help mitigate climate change. It'll help adapt and create resilience, which is very, very important in many countries now, where we see climate change is hitting so hard and thereby undermining all of the growth and prosperity that the countries could have.
Fantastic. That's such a brilliant point that you make there. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And on that note, please, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please do give our wonderful panelists a big round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I will ask you to take your seats and then we will have you back on stage in just a moment. Thank you so much. So it's my great pleasure now to say that we would like to have a representative from each country which has been a signatory to the Global Cooling Pledge to please join us here on stage. We're going to have a celebratory moment to really document the fact that we've also got the illustrious lineup of speakers and guests here. We are very fortunate to have everybody here. So I'm just going to ask everybody to make their way to the stage. One representative from each country. We know there's 63 countries. We're hoping that at least some of them are represented here with us. So please do make your way to the stage, and then we will position everybody for a group photograph to really celebrate the moment that the Global Cooling Pledge has been officially launched here at COP28. Thank you so much. Please do join me here up on stage. We've only got a few moments to gather everybody. Okay, fair enough. So, yes. As everybody makes their ways towards the stage, may I invite Inger Anderson, please, to the stage, the Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme, to join me here at the central stage. May I also ask to return to the stage John Kerry, the United States Special Representative Envoy for Climate. Inger Anderson, if I may ask you to come to the centre of the stage. Mr. John Kerry, if I may ask you to also return to the stage. And we would like to also acknowledge that coming into the Al Waha Theatre, we are very pleased to welcome on stage Dr. Sultan Ahmed El Jaber, the COP28 President. He is joining us here in the centre of the stage. May I please ask all three of you to stand here for a photograph to commemorate the moment that the Global Cooling Pledge has been officially launched at COP28. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please give them a big round of applause. This is the official launch of the Global Cooling Pledge. And we are very pleased that joining us here is Dr. Sultan El Jaber, the COP28 President, who's officially endorsed the Global Cooling Pledge, John Kerry, the United States Special Presidential Envoy, and also Inger Anderson, the Executive Director of UNEP. While they're on stage and everybody joins us, can I just get a photograph with this illustrious lineup? Fantastic. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, So now we will have one representative from each country. Please join us on stage, and we will ask our wonderful technical team to direct the positioning of all the photographs. I can make my way over here because I think we need the central area to be Inger Anderson and, of course, everybody here. So everybody who's joined up to the pledge, the supportive team, please do come up. Do not be shy. That's it. Fantastic. And can we please have it directed from the front to ensure that we get the good... I'll join you here. Fantastic. Dr. Sultan, thank you so much. Okay, fair enough. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. Yes. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please do give our COP28 President another round of applause. He's come along in his very busy schedule, so thank you so much for joining us. I'm just going to ask everybody that we're going to regroup for the second panel of our session because we continue with our discussion and we are going to ensure that we do address the many points and points of discussion that we want to get through this evening. So may I please ask our stage to be cleared? And may I please ask our panelists for our second discussion to please join me on stage as we look at the global cooling pledge and many of the issues that we would like to discuss. This is our final panel in order to just go through some of the discussion points that we have here this evening. So, may I please invite on stage His Excellency Graham Stewart, the Minister of State for Energy, Security and Net Zero from the UK. And may I please invite on stage Yvonne Akisoya, the Mayor of Freetown, Sierra Leone. His Excellency Yataka Matsuwa, who is the Vice Minister, Global Environmental Affairs at Japan. And His Excellency Stefan Tedao, who is the State Secretary, Ministry for the Environment, Nature Conservation, Nuclear Safety and Consumer Protection from Germany. If I may ask them to please join us on stage. We have a little bit of time for our last panel of the day, so thank you so much for joining us. Brilliant. So it looks like I have a seat this time, so fantastic. And first of all, our reflections. What an amazing session in order to officially launch the Global Cooling Pledge. May I go through our wonderful panelists and ensure that everybody has a chance to talk about their motivations for joining the pledge and also to reflect on what a great official launch. I'll begin with you, please. Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you so much. I think, so this year, the summer months of June and August were the hottest worldwide since records began, and cooling will play an important, increasingly role for mitigation and adaptation, and so it's really, for the right times, a necessary event.
And I think when you mention the points about mitigation and adaptation, it actually relates back to our first panel and just those very key points of why it is absolutely integral. In terms of ensuring that we really act on this and seize on this, if I may move down our panelists and ask that maybe we could highlight some of the points that we need to really kind of act on that's been announced today.
Okay, Graham Stewart from the United Kingdom. it's interesting that ancient Middle Eastern peoples created the first fridges 2,000 years ago, the so-called yakchals for storing ice and food. And of course, today, there's an increasing need, especially as the Earth warms, for cooling. And it constitutes around 7% of emissions, but as we bring other emissions down, we might expect that to go up, which is why it's so important that we deal with it. In terms of the actions that the UK is taking, I do think we have made significant progress through official development assistance, as we heard in the last panel. We've funded the Africa Centre of Excellence for Sustainable Cooling and Cold Chain, and it's a one-of-a-kind centre dedicated to sustainable cooling, cold chain and post-harvest management, so making sure that that kind of expertise is available to people is very important. We established the £1 billion Ayrton Fund to support R&D, because we've got to keep innovating if we're going to bring costs down and make sure that we get affordable and clean cooling as widely distributed as possible. So that's what that will be helping to do. And I'm pleased to use this panel to announce that following the recent extension to the now £170 million Clean Energy Innovation Facility, that the UK and IFC are going to continue their successful partnership on a new fund with up to £20 million allocated specifically for sustainable cooling. I just say that we're at the start of this particular journey, so the UK is proud to be among the first to sign up for the Global Cooling Pledge. By working together to improve the efficiency of cooling systems, we can reduce the temperature in our cities through better design, swap to climate-friendly refrigerants, and we can cut almost 80 billion tonnes of carbon dioxide emissions by 2050. So for anyone who hasn't yet signed up to the pledge, I'd encourage people, as John Kerry and others did earlier, encourage people to join the pledge, become the pioneers of a new era of more sustainable, efficient cooling, because when we work together as governments, as the private sector and as civil society, and we give clear signals at the same time, it sends a message to the markets, and it means you not only have donor funding, but you have massive amplification of that through private sector funding too. And if we harness all of that, we really can make a difference on global cooling. Thank you.
I think that definitely deserves a second round of applause. And if we may just pause and just emphasise that funding that you mentioned there, Your Excellency, 117 million was one figure that I wrote down for clean energy facilities. And also you mentioned the UK in partnership with, let's just emphasise that, because I think it really does need that extra spotlight.
Well, thank you. I won't avoid that spotlight, but I think there's a real palpable sense of excitement at this COP. From announcements on the first day, I don't think we've ever had significant breakthroughs on the first day of a COP before. We've got to make sure we keep going with that momentum. I think this global cooling pledge is another great sign, and we have the Powering Past Coal Alliance, which is not only have the United States join it in this COP, but of course the UAE themselves. So I think this is part of, there's a common thread across these areas of governments and companies working together to send signals to markets that trigger investment, drive the costs down, and then lead to a more just solution as well. Because we cannot, whether it's zero emissions vehicles or cooling systems, we've got to make sure that we make this affordable, not just for the developed countries, but right across the world. Only by doing that will we have the just transition, which all parties to this, at this conference should equally be committed to delivering.
Absolutely, that definitely does need to be emphasised, and as you say, the finance needs to really back up those key initiatives. And as we bring in Sierra Leone there, and in terms of really emphasising the messaging there that His Excellency was able to outline about the need for the Global Cooling Pledge and that international collaboration.
So thank you very much, and I'd just like to point out that you're bringing in the city of Freetown.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important part of this, that the pledge has not just been signed by countries, but it's also been signed by cities.
Absolutely.
And that's because within C40 cities, for example, which I co-chair, 75% of our cities are cutting emissions faster than their national governments. And when it comes to cities' abilities to come behind the cooling pledge, there are a number of ways in which this can happen. In many cities, building regulations, building codes, urban planning, all of which can be designed in such a way as to passively reduce temperatures, are under the mandates of cities. So that gives cities an opportunity, and quite a number and a growing number of cities are signing up to the pledge in order to do that. But another area of the cooling pledge where cities are often in the forefront is nature-based solutions. And I'd just like to give a couple of examples from my city, where 2020, we launched hashtag Freetown the Tree Town, our plan to plant 1 million trees and grow 1 million trees in and around the city. We've recently done a heat mapping of the city to identify the heat islands. And just in October, we were able to plant within the million, we're now at 977,000. Within the million, we were able to plant 250,000 trees within neighborhoods that we identified as heat islands. So this is a way of providing cooling, because when it comes to air conditioning, I think we've got to appreciate that availability and accessibility and affordability is not there for many cities in the global south. So cooling can also come from public action by city governments. So the trees are one example. Another example are market shade covers, which we've provided for outdoor markets. Many of the most vulnerable to heat stress are women traders. And leading all of this work is our chief heat officer. We appointed the first chief heat officer in Africa, somebody whose only focus is how we beat the heat and keep the city cool. And just moving on from there, I think it's important, when Damilola was here, she mentioned clean cooking, and you made the link. And I think it's a very, very important one. 82% of cooking fuel in my city is wood or wood charcoal. And now that's not clearly a fossil fuel, but as we seek to look at the health implications of that carbon, there's a need for alternative cooking fuel. The obvious, and the one which is being pushed most aggressively at the moment, is gas. But gas is expensive, and gas is also a pollutant, and we as C40 cities have committed to halve fossil fuels by 2030 in order for us to stay within the 1.5 ambition. So if we're staying within the 1.5, we need a real alternative. And something like electric induction cookers powered by solar is an obvious answer. This is where we say in the climate space, the answers are all there, but the question is the finance for it. So I'd just like to close by saying, or end by saying, the solutions are there for us to find cooler ways, more efficient ways of not just cooling, but actually use of fuel. But the challenge is we need everybody on board. That's one of the reasons why we're so excited that at this COP, CHAMP was signed, the Coalition of High Ambition Multi-Level Partnerships. And that's another 64 number. 64 countries have signed up to that. And that means we're having those countries build into their NDCs, hopefully, that's the agreement, city action. City action on cooling will help us all stay cool.
Wow, that's so powerful. I think that's such a powerful endorsement of the role that cities can play. And the Mayor, we're just really pleased that you are here to represent this entity in society. And just to emphasise this point, when it comes to a place like Sierra Leone and you speak as Mayor of Freetown, would you say that there is an international collaboration with other cities as well for that powerful role that cities play?
Yes.
Mic, please. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I'm the co-chair of C40 Cities, and I'm the co-chair for the Global South. The co-chair for the Global North is City Can of London, and that is a network of almost 100 cities. And when we signed the Cool Pledge, that is signed through C40 cities. A lot of our climate action, we are all committed to climate action. And the interesting thing with cities, which is why we're so excited about the champ, is because when you sign up for C40 cities, one of your requirements is that you have a climate action plan. You don't just have it, you follow it. You fail to follow it, you're out. So it's a club of accountability, which is very different to the nationally determined contributions. So we feel if we're in there, that will put some more fire, to help us get to where we need to get to. We've only got a very short time to stay within 1.5 degrees.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, again, you make another very powerful plea there, that it's not just about the solidarity and that international collaboration. We do need a club of accountability. And hopefully that is what the Global Cooling Pledge may also sign up to as well. Now, Your Excellency, you've been very patient, and I want to also hear about your contribution as well. When we speak about a country like Japan, and you are the Vice Minister of Global Environmental Affairs, can you please go into your motivations and what are you hoping that the Global Cooling Pledge can actually endorse?
Thank you. And first of all, I want to echo with Madam Mayor from Sierra Leone, and it is quite nice. The city can join this global cooling pledge as well, country, since cities' activity is accounting 70% of global greenhouse gas emission, and certainly city is key players to proceed toward the 1.5 degree goal. And Japan, in terms of cooling, we already identified the solution, heat pump and heat pump and inverter is super energy efficient, and together with low GWP refrigerant and life cycle management of refrigerant is critical for 1.5 degree goal. And to this end, to realize this solution, Japan already established initiative on fluorocarbon life cycle management, or IFL, together with 15 countries and international organizations such as IEA and CCAC. So we would like to contribute through these existing activities, and of course Japan would like to work with UNEP, Madam Inga, always, and this nice new pledge.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And it's wonderful to hear the details as you all describe. You mentioned there are the 15 countries that you're collaborating with already, and also bringing on board, as Madam Mayor of Freetown described there, all the other cities that you also are collaborating with there. If I come back to Your Excellency, the role that Germany plays when it comes to following up big, powerful words with big, powerful financing. I mean, we have to really applaud this as well. The Mayor described their CHAMP, which was introduced in the very early days of COP28, and of course the role that Germany plays as well when it comes to championing the finance behind environmental programs. Your relationship with UNEP, and if we just kind of unpack maybe some of the new initiatives that you might be able to share with us here today.
Yes, thank you. So the cooling pledge represents a real opportunity to shape the global cooling sector and ensure that the renewable energies and efficiency measures are integrated in a manner consistent with our 1.5 degrees goal. This is already mentioned. But I think absolutely crucial is a switch to climate and environmental friendly refrigerants as quickly as possible. And Germany has been campaigning internationally for many years and will continue to do so for a direct switch to natural refrigerants. And so it's therefore an important signal that the signatories to the cooling pledge have committed to ratify the Kigali Amendment by end of 2024. So Germany has done so already, and I hope so that many will do so soon as well. And another important step I just want to mention, in October 2023, the European Union agreed to further accelerate European HFC reduction steps and even to phase out HFC completely by 2050. And I think this is a very important signal. But sustainable cooling is also absolutely critical for adaptation. This is also already mentioned, and especially in dealing with more frequent heat waves. This is also true for my country. Already today, our municipalities are developing so-called heat action plans, supported by my government. Nationally, we are in the process of adopting a climate adaptation law, and this includes sustainable measures to respond to the impact of increasing temperatures on the German population. And we are implemented our action plan for natural-based solutions for climate and biodiversity, and I think the natural-based solutions most often very much important for cooling. So I'm grateful that the COP presidency is rising the profile of this important issue, putting it right at the center of this COP, and this pledge makes the start of a journey for more sustainable cooling. And Germany is willing to be part of this common journey.
Oh, that's so fantastic to hear that ringing endorsement there. Thank you so much. We have got on the clock 0, but it would be amiss of me not to return to His Excellency Graham Stewart for just one last parting comment, because with that huge funding pledge that you gave, I think it's only fair to say that it's right that financial imperatives and big finance follows the big powerful words that we've heard here at COP28 and elsewhere when it comes to this issue.
Well, I've been inspired by the trees of Freetown, actually, and I think absolutely fantastic having that kind of local vision and practicality about something which can make a material difference. All I'd say by way of closing is that last year in famously rainy and rather chilly UK, we went above 40 degrees centigrade for the first time ever in recorded history. That's the reality. Places like the north of England are going to have increasing pressure to have cooling because of the temperature that's going on. And we have an opportunity through the Global Cooling Pledge both to meet the increasing needs of people all over the world and have a mitigating effect on the causes of that heating at the same time. So just as Middle Eastern people of 2,000 years ago did with their early fridges, we need to apply the technology of today to meet the needs of everybody in our community and our society and our world. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. We've heard very, very powerful words here today. Opportunity, innovation, collaboration, and incentivising more partnerships as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give our panellists a very warm welcome to stand up and take their seats again. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. And as we bring our Global Cooling Pledge special session here at COP28 to a close, I'm possibly going to just take a moment. I may just invite Inger Anderson back on stage. May I please get a mic for Inger Anderson, because I think it's only fair that the closing remarks are given to our illustrious speaker who opened this session, because we've got a few minutes on the clock. I just want to bring you, please, here, the Executive Director of UNEP. Please give Inger Anderson another round of applause.
I think the applause actually goes to President Sultana Jabbar for picking up this and for running with this and for ensuring that today we have 63 signed up members to this pledge. And the applause should also go to the absolutely brilliant panelists who have highlighted the importance of this cooling pledge. We from UNEP, we are very proud and humbled to serve the member states as they lean in on this issue. And I can assure you that we will, as we heard, hold the signatories' feet to the fire by following up. And I have to say that my dear colleague Lily, who's sitting humbly there, and her Emirati colleague, whose name I have not yet caught.
Rama.
Rama. No, the gentleman who sits next to me.
Yes.
They deserve the real credit for making us get this far. It is through these kind of partnerships that we will arrive. And I do want to thank you for an outstanding moderation. Thank you very much for a very successful evening.
Thank you so much. It's been my great pleasure. I'm just going to end on one note, because COP28 is all about action. What is our call to action? So I think we need to end on that. The gratitude and the thanks is very welcome. So how do we continue and how do we urge more people to sign up? What's the call to action?
The call to action is very simple. Ratify Kigali Amendment, because when you ratify, that means that you step in to making sure that you can phase down HFCs and ensure that you get smart about cooling. It is not just refrigerants. It is also, as we heard from Freetown is Treetown. Now, how clever is that? Because by having trees, you bring down the ambient temperature. By smart building, you do much lower intensity of electricity in your buildings. It's getting your building codes fixed so that it becomes part of your permitting, that you have to be energy efficient in your buildings. This is what we from UNEP, with the good support of all these good people here and the governments behind them and the companies, will continue to work on. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Inga Anderson there. And as we end, may I ask you to invite your team to come and take a team photograph here. We've mentioned Lily and Rama. Please don't be shy. And everybody else. Mikhail, please, Inga, please do come and take the central stage for the team photograph. And thank you everybody for joining us for this very special session here at COP28 as we officially launched the Global Cooling Pledge. Thank you so much. Please do take to the stage. Sophie as well. Please don't be shy. Let's have the team members. Sophie there. Yes, fantastic. Swan, before you leave, I'm going to join as well, because I feel like I'm part of the UNIT family here. Thank you, everybody. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.
السيدات والسادة، في ختام هذه الجلسة نشكركم على الحضور. نود أن نلفت انتباهكم أننا ندير جدولا ضيقا للغاية اليوم. يرجى مغادرة المسرح للسماح لنا بإعادة ترتيب القاعة. وشكرا.
Ladies and gentlemen, that brings this session to a close. Thank you for attending. May we bring to your attention that we are running a very tight program today, so we kindly request that you vacate the theatre. Thank you.